Hi everyone, welcome to this next Middle-earth painting video. What I'm going to be looking at over the next couple of videos is these amazing models here. So what we've got, on the right we've got Legolas and we've got Gimli. These come from the original Fellowship of the Ring box set, which came out when the original Fellowship of the Ring film came out in November 2001. So these models are almost 20 years old, and they're still as fantastic as they were when they came out. On the left, we've got Aragorn from the Attack at Helm's Deep, or Heroes of Helm's Deep, I should say. And this came out in November 2002, so slightly younger than the other two, but still a fantastic model. I'm painting these as part of a commission, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to just run you through how I paint them. So keep an eye out on my channel. I'll have 3 separate videos, one for each, hopefully very short, and if they're useful for you, that's perfect. If you enjoy them, please leave a like, please comment, and please subscribe, because these are fantastic models. And I remember when they came out, I was heavily into painting Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and these came out and they looked quite small. They were on round bases, and my brother had them, and I took one look at them and I was like, nah, not really for me. But some 20 years later, this is my main game, and these miniatures are still fantastic. So hopefully people can find it useful, and these guides can actually be of some service to you all. So please settle yourself down and enjoy these videos. So as I mentioned, this Aragorn is actually from the Helm's Deep scene. So he's got some more armour on him. Of course, Legolas, Gimli and Aragorn all kit up a bit more in Helm's Deep, and they get some better armour. This one, it's a very, I say dull, it's got a lot of browns and metal to it. There's not a lot else to this model. So we'll run through the colours that I use for base coats, and then we'll move on to talk a bit more about how we highlight them to try and keep them looking different, because quite a few of the base coats are the same. So skin, as always, face and hands, Vallejo model colour, basic skin tone, standard. For his for his hair and for his tunic here, or tunic, I'm going to be using Vallejo chocolate brown. Now, to try and keep it a little bit different, for the trousers I'm going to be adding in a little bit of black grey, just to get a darker brown for his trousers. And then finally for the boots down there, I say finally, the boots are just going to be black grey, so they take the wash quite well. For the chainmail parts, I'll be using black grey, simply because I need something as a base for a light dry brush. So black grey works better than regular standard grey. And I think, really, that's it for this one. As I said, not a lot to this model. So I'll go away and I'll apply these base coats, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a bit more about washes. So we've got the base colours down on Aragorn now, and it's time to start looking at the flesh washes. Well, not just flesh washes, all washes. But first off, I start with the flesh wash, so that'll be on his hands and his face. This will help us identify the details that need to be picked out at the next stage. For anything metal, so his sword and his chainmail, we'll be using Army Painted Dark Tone. And then finally for the leather, and actually to be honest for his boots, actually we'll be using the dark tone as well. For the leather on his tunic, his trousers and anywhere else, we'll be using Army Painter Strong Tone. The difference between these two is just that the dark tone's a bit more like Nuln Oil, the strong tone's a bit more like Agrax Earth. So very useful paints and very good for giving a very nice quick result. So I'll go ahead and do those, and as I have with other videos, we'll then come back and we'll discuss highlighting. So now the washes have been applied, you'd be actually quite right in saying it just looks a bit messy. And that's fine at this stage, because all we've really done is just put on the base layers, quite rough and ready, and we've applied a wash. And although washes are great, they don't quite give the definition that you need to finish a model off. So what we do from here is we go and apply some layers. So extra layers and highlights. And particularly on this model, where there's quite a bit of brown, what we're going to try and do with those layers and highlights is to try and build up some differentiation between the different colours. So Aragorn's wearing quite a lot of brown leather. So what we can do is we can highlight some lighter, leave some a bit darker, just to sort of make it look like they're different pieces of leather. So I mean, in no particular order. First off, what I normally do at this stage is highlight the faces. So for that, after having applied the flesh wash, I go back just with the regular basic skin tone. I highlight on the forehead, the bridge of the nose, the tops of the cheeks, and the chin. If there's anything else showing, for example, if I'm working on a larger scale miniature, then I might actually sort of add in bags under the eyes or sort of creases around the face where needed. But on miniatures this small, not really too much to do. Same with the hands. I'll normally just sort of like highlight each finger and leave it at that. I then go back and give it another wash of flesh wash just to dull it down a little bit before going in with a little bit of light flesh. Now this will just be an extreme highlight on the brows, sometimes part of the forehead, the bridge of the nose, tops of the cheeks, and if they haven't got a beard, the chin. And this is just sort of like a couple of little dots just to give that sort of like extreme highlight. So once the face is done, and it's relatively straightforward to do, I then do the eyes. So for these it is quite simple, and I have got another video about painting eyes. I will normally just paint the eye socket with white, try not to get it too messy, and then do a sort of dot of black in the centre of the pupil. If you mess it up, don't worry, because you can go back with the regular flesh colour again and just paint over it, so it's not an issue. So with the flesh done on this guy, what we'll be doing next is we'll be going over the sort of black areas. So for the boots, a little bit of black grey. It doesn't show up too much because we have used the dark tone wash. So don't worry if you don't really see much. You might even be able to skip this sort of step and go straight to London Grey, which is sort of like a very, very good next step in a sort of like tricolour method. So after the London Grey, I might use a very little bit of light grey, just as sort of like a very little edge highlight, because if we're doing black, we don't want it to turn grey, so we keep it as highlights to a minimum with these. On the hair, I have done it as a mix of colours, but this will be highlighted with the chocolate brown on his hair. And that's just sort of like layered slightly so that you can see that you can still see the black underneath, but the top of his hair is a bit more brown. And this colour will also be used for the leather. So what I'd normally do is I'll go and I'll highlight all of the leather again. So leaving the areas which are darker in the recesses, just picking up the high level bits of the cloth or fabric or leather or whatever it is. Now for the chocolate brown, I like to highlight this with, you can't see the label on it, but it's Game Colour Earth, and it's sort of like a mid-brown, but it's very good for highlighting and adding to paints to get them lighter, because you don't want to add white because that'll make it far too bright. So I add a bit of the earth colour, and then for the final extreme highlights I add some Iraqi sand. I've also got a colour called Bone White, which is very similar to old Games Workshop Screaming Skull. I can't remember what it was, but it's like a very light cream, and adding that into paint can give a really good, nice highlight layer. So with that done, it's pretty much finished, and it's that simple. It's knowing which colours you want to use in which order. For the sword and the chainmail, I'll be giving that probably a very light coat of Vallejo gunmetal, and then give me 1 second because I haven't actually got the pot out. Oh, I hope that wasn't too much effort. I've got a Game Colour silver, so that's a very, very light bright metal, so I don't use that for a base coat because it is just too light, but on top of the gunmetal it forms quite a nice layer. And that pretty much does it for Aragorn. It's, like I said at the beginning, this is a very simple model. He's wearing a lot of brown and there's a lot of metal. So I'll go away, I'll apply those highlights, and then I'll talk you through a bit more if there's anything else I did, although, to be honest, I don't really think there will be. So we'll come back after it's done and we'll have a look at the results. So last time we were looking at this model, it looked a little bit naff in honesty. The colours have been blocked in, they've been washed, but there was no real sort of like differentiation between the shades and the tones. And this model is a little bit difficult to get that because there's a lot of grey, there's a lot of black, and there's a lot of chainmail. There's no colours. For example, on Gimli you've got the red, on Legolas you've got the green, whereas this it's brown or metal or black. All very boring. So what I had to do is try and make sure there's a difference between the layers of leather. So for example, on the bottom of the tunic here, I've made it quite sort of like the highlights quite strong so that they stand out. And if I were to turn him around, you can see on the back, the highlights on the back of the back of his tunic, and at the bottom quite strong to make them stand out. Don't want them too strong, don't want it looking like a different colour, but just had to make sure that they were definitely there. Same on the boots, keep the highlights relatively strong so you can actually see them, but again not so strong that we turn the black into a grey. Now the face, this one actually has come out very nicely. It's a bit of a tricky one, this one, because he's got a pretty well formed socket on this side, eye socket I should say, but there's a piece of strand of hair going across this eye socket, so actually getting the eyes painted in can be quite tricky, but I'm happy with how this has turned out. I've included some details on his braces as well, because by this point this is Helm's Deep Aragorn. So Boromir's dead and he's picked up Boromir's braces, braces, I can't remember what they're called exactly. But yeah, I thought that was a nice little detail to add on there. And the face, did it the same way I normally do faces. I went back and I added in some extra of the original base colour, added some of the light flesh colour, washed it back, and then came in again with some highlights. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. He is a pretty simple model, but it's quite difficult for everything to end up looking the same because it's just, and I'll say it again, it's just brown, it's just metal. So hopefully people found this useful. If you have, please like, comment and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. If you want to see more of these videos, I'm hoping to release a few more for either Middle-earth or Star Wars Legion, and I just want to keep it going really. I'm getting a good momentum. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye.